My name's Angelina Diana. I'm a psychic medium. If you're hurting or you're having a tough day, go out, get your mind off yourself, help someone else. There's no place for ego in this work. Grief never goes away, you just learn to manage it. I feel our loved ones are always with us. I think that the Red Sox are going to win the World Series, but I feel like one of my parents aren't going to be here. Hartford's caving in. The city of Hartford's caving in. Kiss 95.7 and Courtney called me up, and I was a resident psychic medium for them for about 10 years. I heard the dog say, "You're speaking to my owner. When it comes to death, it's only between God and that individual spirit. Love the people in your life. Don't take life for granted. You don't have to kill a chicken to get your future." My name's Angelina Diana. I'm a psychic medium, and as a psychic, I'm more like a spiritual counselor, and I love to tune into people's energy to give them a sense of who they are, to validate the non-essential part of them. You know, we kind of look at the world in a physical way, but we don't tend to pay attention to what's within us. So I love to validate that for people so that they feel good about their lives and they can attract what they want. And as a medium, I work with those that have crossed over.
So I did a little research on your background and said you went from broadcasting on the radio and then you changed to, doing the psychic and the medium and communicating with the spirits. Mm-hmm. Can you talk through what was the turning point that made you kind of switch past there?
Well, it wasn't a quick one. Yeah. I can tell you that. As a kid, I was brought up Catholic, and my grandmother used to read me with a regular deck of playing cards. She was Polish on my mother's side, and my mother was a little afraid of it, so I'd come home and she'd make me do the rosary. So I had this kind of dichotomy growing up. So I really feared the idea of a psychic or a medium, but I was really interested in being a newscaster. So I started out in radio. I wanted to be the next Barbara Walters, but while I was on a morning show in Springfield, Massachusetts, the morning guy said, "Hey, why don't you have some psychics or mediums?" This was like in 1998. On the show, and I was like, "Hey, yeah, that sounds great. My grandmother used to read me with a regular deck of playing cards." And they went, "Don't talk about it on the air. It's not credible." Like I was in news when, you just couldn't talk about those things. But as I started to get different psychics and mediums on for the show, things on a personal level started resonating for me, where I remembered things that my grandmother said, my babcha. I started applying it to my own life, which felt really good. So that from 1998 till about 2000, I was kind of picking up on things on my own and feeling really good about my life. Before that, I was feeling, my grandmother had passed at that point. I was starting to feel a connection to her. And on a psychic level, I felt like I could really start tuning into the things I wanted in my life. So as a newscaster, I was still doing radio, and as a newscaster, I was like, I really wonder if this would work if I just did tarot on somebody else. I'm curious. And so I started to do tarot on friends, family, not professionally, just curious. And then if you would ask for like, "Hey, can you try to connect to spirits?" And I'd try. And I'd put it in the back of my head until about 6 months later, people were calling me back saying, "Can you do another reading on me? You helped me." And I went, "What? What are you talking about?" Like it was just for fun, or just to see if it was validating energy for someone else. And so I started to just help friends and family. And I was like, I really want to study this more because I really feel like I can help people with it. But I didn't feel I earned the title of psychic medium. There was an event that kind of led to it. I was in the newsroom with the morning guy. And by this point, I was full-blown meditating every day. I was always prayerful. I was studying. This was like end of 2000. And I was really enjoying what I was doing. So I said, "You know what? Out of curiosity, I'm going to see if I can change the energy of the newsroom," because I had to share it with the morning guy. He was a nice guy, but he didn't come in the most happiest mood. So I decided to smudge the room. Do you know what smudging is? Yeah. So I got some there. I would smudge the room, and I said, I wonder if he's going to notice. So he comes in and he goes, "You've rearranged the room." I said, "No, I didn't touch anything." He goes, "It feels better in here." I go, "It feels better?" He goes, "What did you do? Are you doing that witchcraft stuff?" Like, I don't do witchcraft. I go, No, I just smudged the room. I kind of lost my job over it. Kind of, yeah. They're like, we're not too sure about this thing. So the last 2 weeks of working there, it was kind of a mutual decision, like, yeah, it's time to move on. So I wasn't working for about 3 months. And that's when I said, you know what? This is my passion. Let's just give it a try. So by 2001, I started forming my own practice. But it was kind of funny story how the universe went, bloop, you're not meant to be here. Even though I loved the idea of radio, came back into my life 5 years later where the #1 morning show, Kiss 95.7 in Courtney, called me up. And I was a resident psychic medium for them for about 10 years. Oh, wow. So everything comes full circle in life. You think you're going through something bad, like, oh no, I'm not going to be Barbara Walters. Oh no, I'm not going to be in radio. And you let it go for a while and you follow what your gut is saying. And then it comes back to you. So maybe the reason why I was in radio for 10 years was so that I can bring this work in a media kind of way, which I was honored to do for about 10 years on Kiss 95.7.
You mentioned your grandma passing as kind of when a lot of this started. Is that the first time you felt connected to a spirit, or is there a different event where you kind of associate as the first time you really felt connected to that world?
Well, there's two worlds. There's the psychic world, and then there's also mediumship. And I did have a really outstanding event psychically when I was a child. When I was in 6th grade, I would have night terrors. I don't know if you know what that is. Like I'd wake up in the middle of the night and my dreams would be like right in front of me, like I could see them. And one such event was I woke up in the middle of the night and I was saying to my mother, she would get up and she'd be like, oh no, she's having another one. And I said to my mother, Hartford's caving in. The city of Hartford's caving in. Like I felt like the whole city was caving in. So I woke up that morning and she had the news on, Channel 3, I'll never forget, she turned it off. She goes, do you remember what you said last night? I said, no. She said, Hartford's caving in. I go, oh, okay. She goes, the Hartford Civic Center's roof caved in this morning. Oh my goodness. I went, what? She goes, my mother was she's in heaven now, but she was a very open woman spiritually, but she had her own little fears, and she went, why don't you go pray? For a while. She wasn't a prude or anything. She was just, just that you don't get upset about this guy. I'm not upset about it. I just don't like having night terrors. I'm probably, 12 years old at that time. So that was my wow, event I had as a child. I would have to say, when it comes to mediumship, are you speaking personally or professionally?
Either, really.
Well, on a personal level, I would sense and have vivid dreams of my babcia, my mother's mother. My dad's 100% Italian, but my mother was French and Polish, so I grew up in a very, cultural family. So I was very close to my babcia and would have vivid dreams of being in her kitchen or she'd be cooking. And that wafting feeling would stay with me all day, like, I know you're with me, which is very comforting, that we have this ability, if we really sense the purpose of why they were in our lives, we can actually have visits with them when we sleep. And so I would have to say, on a mediumistic personal level, I would have that, and I still do. It's really a beautiful experience.
Is there a standard process you have to, let's say, open the door to talking to those spirits when you're working with people?
Well, I feel we all have this ability, by the way. If we're missing someone that's in heaven, paradiso, the other side, whatever your belief system is, that we all have the ability to connect deeper than just signs. And that's part of the basis of why I do my work, because I never intended to be a medium. It wasn't my goal, but I worked on the ability, and now I feel like I can do it personally and for others. So my process is the difference between being in your mind versus in your spirit. In the mind lives worry, fear, grief, the inability to forgive. In the spirit lives love, patience, kindness, forgiveness, self-control, peace, all these beautiful things. So it's not really like opening a door, so to speak, because I feel our loved ones are always with us. We just don't see them because we're very mind-centric. So meditation, prayer, daydreaming, having the intention to say, okay, it's as a professional, it's my job to represent those that have crossed over So let me make sure I've made enough time in my day to relax, to meditate. It's a work day, but an honoring to be able to help someone. So meditation, prayer, and daydreaming. They're all the same thing, really. It depends on your belief system. But being able to separate the thoughts of the mind, they're always going to be there if you're alive. So, it's normal. You can't fix normal. Just like grieving is in the mind, that's normal. You can't fix normal. But there is a technique, it's not a gift, like in my opinion, like some mediums say, it's an ability where you work on this separation of, here are my thoughts, here are my feelings. Let me recognize that they'll be there when I come back out of this meditation. I'm gonna, like a muscle, push them aside and build up the gifts of the Spirit and be connected to the good and to heaven and those that have something to say. And that philosophical viewpoint, almost scientific philosophical mind versus spirit, is the basis of how, as you say, opening the door or being available to those that have crossed over to help others. Because that's the reason why I do the work. But I also love, during the session, making them aware of if someone comes through and they go, wow, I felt that before. Good. That means you've already connected. Grieving is such a victimizing thing. In the physical, it's true. We can't talk to them anymore. But I sincerely believe we all have a spirit where love lives. And if we can amp up that love and amp up that purpose, then we too can be a personal channel and connect to our loved ones. So that's my philosophical viewpoint of why I feel Spirit has brought me to do this. But I, as you say, open the door through meditation, prayer, and daydreaming.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I guess if there was a period or a day or so where, let's say, things are stressed for you and you haven't been meditating as much as you would like or praying as much as you would like, do you find that it's harder then to connect to that?
If I'm grieving, if I'm having, if there's something in my physical life that I can't seem to overcome, I'll reschedule clients.
Oh, really?
I would rather do that than struggle through a session. I've been doing this since 2001. It's not worth it. It's not worth it for someone who is grieving and who has frankly paid money. There's also a business here. But on a spiritual loving level, I want to be my best. And if I've called clients and I explain to them, they go, I understand. They understand because they want to have a good experience too. So being honest and upfront, like, hey, I just had a loss. I need some time. I mean, I don't get over my loss, but I learn to manage it so that I can be present for others. And on a personal level, it feels good to help others when you're hurting a little bit. I think that's the basis of Christianity. To be honest with you, that if you're hurting or you're having a tough day, go out, get your mind off yourself, help someone else.
You keep mentioning religion and Christianity. Do you think, like, as you've gone through this journey of being a psychic medium, has your faith or religion gotten stronger? Was that always part of your life growing up?
Well, I think that there's different definitions to Christianity, different definitions to religion, different ways that people want to practice. I was brought up Catholic. When I was 21, I converted to Judaism because I had a different marriage with a Jewish man and a family that he already had made so that I would make Jewish holidays. And so I've had different experiences. I've also read the Kabbalah. I still read the Bible. There's a wonderful spiritual lawyer who's in heaven now that wrote a book called The Desire for Mutual Recognition, Peter Gable. It was a strikingly, amazingly philosophical, spiritual man. I'm open to love and spirituality. Now, with that being said, I've made the personal decision to be Christian. That's a personal thing. But I do believe that everyone has their own ability to channel, whether they're Buddhist or Jewish or Muslim. There's an opportunity to open up to a higher universe.
When you are connected to a spirit or doing a reading, is there anything that you feel in your body that's like a physical sensation that you would be able to describe, or is there nothing like that?
It's not really physical. It's actually a separation from the physical. And it's like being, like a tennis player will talk about being in the zone. There's a zone that you get into that you don't feel your body anymore. It's a very calming, the Zen-like energy. Yeah, it's very much like that. Working with the chakras, working with meditation. That's what it feels like. But it's actually a pull away from the physical.
Through this journey you've had as a psychic and a medium, and is there maybe a most memorable connection you've had with the spirit that you'd be able to talk about?
One such experience was I was with a family on Long Island, and their son had passed. And we were in their kitchen, in their home. I don't know if you know what a classic Long Island kitchen looks like, but it's very, there's some glitz, and then there's some, ocean stuff because they're near the water. Like, it's a eclectic place to be. So we were sitting in their kitchen, and their son had come through, and they had validated, he had validated that he had overdosed, and he passed in the house. And during the session, the living dog, they had a German Shepherd, came up to me and sat next to me and put his paw on my thigh like that. And the father's kind of shooing him. I go, no. And I could hear the dog say, in my clairaudience, that's an ability, I heard the dog say, "You're speaking to my owner," which was their son. So I looked over at the parents. I go, "This is your son's dog." They went, "Yes." And I don't know if I grew up in Connecticut. Long Islanders are a beautiful breed. They just want you to get to the point, say what's real, don't mishmash words. And, the father's like, "So what else yes, go on with the reading or get the dog away from me." Like, there's an anxiety. They're also grieving too. And I said, and as soon as I was ready to kind of pet the dog, I heard the dog say to me, "I'm going to catch a rabbit." Now, here I've got these anxious Long Islanders, and the father's like, "Well, what's Newton?" And I said, "Do I tell them? I have to tell them." I go, "Well, the dog then said," and they kind of went, "that it's going to catch a rabbit." And the father said, "Okay, that's enough. Yes, that's my son's dog, but he's distracting you from hearing from my son. I'm going to put the dog out. This dog has never caught diddly squat." I said, "Oh, okay. I respect that." The session is over. There's a scratch at the door. The dog comes in with a dead squirrel. And the father's like, "What? Well, he's never caught it. What is this?" I go, "Imagine an empathic dog in this house, sensing your son all the time." Dogs are very empathic. Cats are psychic. There's a difference. So, if the cat senses the wildness of your mind, it'll skedaddle. But as soon as you relax on the couch, watching, a movie, eating popcorn, it sits on your lap. A dog, no matter what kind of a day you're having, is very empathic towards you. They'll nuzzle their nose under your wrist. They're there for you. Cats are too, but dogs, very empathic. So I said, this dog has been sensing your son and has been trying to tell you, I can sense him, and wanted to prove it. So it said, "I'm going to go catch a rabbit to prove to you that I can feel and hear and see." Maybe it doesn't know the difference between a squirrel and a rabbit, but I do feel like the dog was in a demonstrative way trying to say, I can sense him.
Do you feel that a spirit has ever either purposely tried to send you in the wrong direction or lied to you?
Mm-mm.
No?
Nope.
Never happens?
Nope. Remember, in the mind lives deceit, anger, the inability to forgive, worry, fret, fear, disease, addiction. When the body dies, so does that function, because we lie in the physical because of physical things. Can a loved one come through and say, "I was a liar," so that the living person go, "Yeah, they were a liar"? That's happened. But I've never been purposefully brought in the wrong direction. If I've sounded wrong, it's because I've misinterpreted.
When you are talking to a spirit, do you hear them as what their voice would be, or do you hear it as kind of that inner dialogue that anyone always has going in their head?
I will hear it in my own voice, but sometimes I pick up on the inflection of the person. But I don't hear their particular voice.
As a psychic, have you ever been scared or frightened of something you've seen in the future?
I wouldn't use the word afraid, although it might sound fearful. I remember it was, my mother passed in 2004, just before 2003, that I had this premonition. And it was one of these things I'm like, I think that the Red Sox are going to win the World Series, but I feel like one of my parents aren't going to be here, which was, my mind went, what? Stop it. Like, that's the first thing the brain does because we don't want that. So the following spring, April 6, 2004, my mother died. Fall of 2004, the Red Sox won the World Series. And I looked back on that and I went, oh my gosh, why was I shown that? And it made me remember some other things that had happened. There was a wonderful reporter named, his last name was Bloom. I'm trying to remember his first name. He had died in Afghanistan from a brain aneurysm. Now, I was getting ready to go on the trip and I looked at the television and I went, I feel like he's going to die or something's going to happen. That Sunday morning, it was a long weekend, my husband called me and goes, the reporter passed away. Which reporter? He goes, the one that you saw on television. I went, oh my God. So I went down, and this was when I was early in my development, so this would be like 2002. I went down to the classroom and I'm talking to the media, and they go, stop. I went, what? They go, stop. You sound very ego-filled. This is my lesson in ego. There's no place for ego in this work. What do you mean? You're a very kind person, Angelina, but that isn't something you talk about. You're being shown that so that you learn that no one is capable of having control over someone else's life or understanding their path when it comes to death. It's only between God and that individual spirit. You're being shown that so that you don't open yourself up to that and talk about it. Because it's true, no one has no medium, no psychic has any control over someone's path or destiny. And I feel like when we're being shown that, that was a professional thing I was being shown with that reporter to help me in my professional life. And on a personal level, a couple years later, when that happened about my mom, that was teaching me that we can be shown things, but we don't have control over somebody's life. You know, it's sad to lose a mother. We were close. I could cry right now over it. It's been how many years since 2004? 21 years. Grief never goes away. You just learn to manage it. Cannot stop grieving. You just learn to manage it. So I was being taught something personal, that love the people in your life. Don't take life for granted. You're not promised tomorrow, but you don't have control over somebody's life.
Can you talk about maybe how you've seen your psychic and medium abilities change from when you first started to where you are today?
They'll always be changing because not one medium or psychic knows it all. But yes, I think that when I decided to do this for a living, I prayed and also spoke to Spirit. I said, I'll only continue this if I can help people and represent you well. So in the beginning, I was what they call very clairsentient. There's 5 metaphysical senses, and clairsentience is where the solar plexus is, where our personal power is, with the chakras, which are energy centers in the body. So people don't know what they are, but it's a Sanskrit word for spinning wheel of energy. We have many chakras, but 7 main chakras. And in the personal power center, ruled by the color yellow, there is clairsentience, which is clear feeling. I was very clear feeling in the beginning, would feel things, feel this, feel that. But then I asked to develop more into hearing, which is clairaudience, and then through the years, clairvoyance, which is seeing, and there clairambiance, which is clear tasting, and clairalience, which is clear smelling. So through the years, each metaphysical sense has gotten stronger, or they work more in tandem.
To someone that doubts your abilities or doesn't believe that there's really psychics or mediums, like, what is your response to that?
It depends. It's situational for me. If it's out in public, and it's cynical, I ignore it. If they're skeptical and they want to have an adult dialogue about it, I'll talk to them. I'm not trying to convert people. I just share what Spirit has taught me. If it's in a sitting during a reading, I will work with anyone. People come to me because they're grieving, they're curious, they fear death, they're scientific, they're skeptical. If they're cynical, I give them their money back within 5 minutes, and I wish them well. But I don't work with cynical people. It's not. I wish them well, and I pray for them, and I hope that they, I'm sure you've met people who've never touched empathy, and to me, hurting people do hurting things. So they can't be faulted for it, but I don't have to expose myself to it.
Why do you think someone, like a cynical person, even comes and meets with you in the first place?
Because they want to prove you wrong. They just want to be in a position. It's interesting. You could ask the question in a general way too and say, why do people lash out at other people for no reason? Hurting people do hurting things. Someone is angry because something happened to them. Maybe they've had a horrific loss. Maybe they've also sat with an unethical practitioner and they just want to battle it out with one that is ethical, and they just don't know that. So there's many reasons why, but I just choose not to work with them. And I'll even say, if you want to come back someday and be skeptical, I'll be happy to have an adult dialogue with you.
This ability that you've developed, do you always view it as a blessing, or do you sometimes feel it's a burden as well on yourself?
It's definitely an honoring and a blessing, but there are times where it doesn't feel burdensome. It's a management of empathy and sadness, because sometimes you sit with people who have had horrific losses and you really have to learn to manage that. So it's never burdensome.
Is there any intentional things you do to protect your own mental health when, because you're dealing with a lot of grief?
Yeah, I do try to focus on the purpose and how, the way I always end a session is I say, I hope this helped you. And when they say yes, that helps. If they say it's food for thought, and there were moments that it helped. And I'll often say, well, that's grief, isn't it? That we have moments where we feel good and we can celebrate that person. Then we have moments where we have to honor our grief. But if I can walk away saying, okay, I helped that person, that helps. Sometimes I cry with the person. That's why I have tissues here. I'll have to grab a tissue with them. Or I'll read something positive or keep something positive in my life going and make that the focus. But I don't feel it affects me so mentally that I'm depressed or anything. But I think this work has helped me with my mental health, because I know there's an afterlife. I also know that when bad things happen, there's always something that you could pull from it and make it great again. Or there's a continuum. I remember when I told my dad I was going to be a psychic medium. He looked at me, he goes, my dad's 100% Italian. Angelina, you want to be a what? A psychic, a medium? You got to work for a company like me. I have a pension, I have a this, I have a that. But you've been in radio, you've been a dental assistant, you've been an aerobic instructor, now you're this. And I said, yeah, but this is my life's work, Dad. And I could look back on everything. When I was a dental assistant, I didn't like putting my fingers in people's mouths, but I like calming them down. I use that in my work. When I was an aerobic instructor, I loved transforming people, and I use that in my work. When I was in radio, think about it, all these little invisible things in the air, and they hit a radio and it makes sound. I'm like a radio, there's invisible things in the air, I'm gonna make sound about it. Everything that I've ever done has helped me with my life's work, and that's life. We go through things in life, and they all come full circle. So that this work has helped me with my mental health.
Is there something that comes to mind if I said, what is your biggest regret?
Not visiting my grandmother when she was ill. She was in the hospital very sick. And I was only 19 at the time. This work obviously hadn't touched my life, and I was afraid. I was fearful, you know. I'm going to get emotional. And then she died a couple of months later, you know. So you look back on that, and there's grief. She died in 1985. I was young, you know. And yeah, you're going to have to hand me a tissue, see? This is the empathetic part coming out, and that's normal, and you can't fix normal. To me, this is proof that grief never goes away. You just learn to manage it. But it's okay to have a moment like that. That's normal. You can't fix normal. But I'd said, you know, look, knowing what I know now, I certainly do regret that. But she knows how I feel. That's a beautiful thing about our loved ones. I feel they do their life review through us, so they know how we feel. And the fact that I'm still getting emotional, she knows that I love her.
If you could go back 5 years in time, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say to look back on your accomplishments professionally, especially with the scientific world and the Forever Family Foundation, and see it as not just what I experienced, but that I did contribute.
Is there a common misconception about psychic mediums that you wish could be corrected?
Yes. First off, with psychics, you don't have to kill a chicken to get your future. You don't have to put candles in the freezer. There's no such things as a curse. You don't have to pay thousands of dollars to have a curse removed. There's no such thing as a curse. When it comes to mediumship, if you're an ethical medium, be sure that there's evidence present and that they're making statements of energy versus saying, oh, there's a lovely woman putting their hand on your shoulder. She loves you so much. Like, that's so general. So I wish folks would realize that mediums aren't all general. There are evidence-based mediums out there that really work hard, not to cure grief, because we can't cure grief, but to even the playing field, to say you can be a personal channel and meditate, pray, and daydream, get information from your loved one first, and then see the sign. What we generally do first is we send me a sign, and then we see that sign, the brain goes, is that real though? But if you talk to them first, get the information, then you see the sign, can't doubt it. So if those that are skeptical, especially if those are cynical, but skeptical folks, if they realize that there are evidential, even scientifically based mediums that really do want to teach and help, it's not our job to convert. Just here's the evidence, find out for yourself. But that it is meant to be helpful and teaching. And really our job isn't really to satisfy the client, even though you want them to be happy when they leave. It's really to represent spirit. To say, this is what here's the evidence and the messages of what they want to say, and here's who they're with, and here's what they're doing, and here's why they know their purpose. Now they're waiting for you to find yours so you can connect.
The best piece of advice you've ever received in your life that you would want to share with other people, what would that be?
That the humanness of who we are, we all have a need for one another. I'm going to speak about Peter Gable for a moment, who wrote the book, The Desire for Mutual Recognition. What he spoke about and teaches are somewhat spiritual, and like in The Little Prince they say, what is essential about everyone is invisible to the eye. So you don't know who someone really is unless they tell you or show you. And he spoke about this invisible thread between us, that we all have a need for one another, and that this need can actually create a ricochet effect that can change the world for the good. So the advice, if I go off of Peter, is connect. when you're walking down the street, he would say your first inclination is you divert your eyes if somebody's coming at you, because are they going to judge me? Are you going to judge them? But if you look at someone and go, hey, good morning, how are you? And you just connect. That connection is so important. And if you start and my feelings on that, working off of my work, is if you start working on that now, and then somebody passes, there's that invisible string that's even more developed. Like, I'm constantly sending to my husband, stop, he's at work, stop and get milk, like, just to work on our telepathy. He'll bring home ice cream and I'll go, it's a dairy product, we're getting close. Like, we work on stuff like that because we're very much in love after 30 some odd years, and we're very connected, and we're life partners, and I want to start working on that, so that connection stays strong. Yeah. And that would be my advice. Don't be afraid to connect. And if somebody says no to you or they reject you, that's their own plate that they're handing you. It has nothing to do with what you're offering them. Don't take it personal.